child slavery case against Hershey, Nestle, tossed out by the federal court. This is interesting, happened in DC. Let's put up the judge. So let's follow the logic of this, all right? So a federal judge in Washington, DC has now dismissed a lawsuit by 8 citizens of Mali who sought to hold Hershey and other companies liable for child slavery on Ivory Coast cocoa farms. Now, I want you to realize that in her dismissal, the judge did not say it didn't happen or there's not sufficient evidence. This was dismissed because of something entirely different. Now, the judge, let's put it back up. Her name is Dabney Friedrich, said the plaintiffs in the proposed class action lack standing to sue. They lack standing to sue, according to the federal judge. She said the plaintiffs did not show a traceable connection between the 7 defendants' companies and specific plantations. The judge said the plaintiffs also did not adequately explain the role of intermediaries in the cocoa supply chain, noting that the companies did not monitor activity in free zones where about 70 to 80% of the cocoa is produced. Now, here's the thing, everybody knows what this is. This is one of those things, it's not even a cultural secret. They know what this is. This is forced labor. There's a promise made. They bring these young people over and then they tell them, you gotta work. You gotta work in order for us to let you go. And they continue to work, and they are never really let go. This has been noted for the record for a while. Mali and Ivory Coast share a border in West Africa. The plaintiffs said they were trafficked as children, okay? After being approached by unfamiliar men who promised paying jobs, but were ultimately not paid for their labor, threatened with starvation if they did not work, and required to live in squalor. That's called slavery. That's called child trafficking. That's human trafficking. That's child labor. Multiple violations here, right? Okay. Trafficked children are reportedly sold for as little as $34 to cocoa farmers based on other reporting about this that has been done. Their lawyer, let's put up the lawyer. His name is Terry Collingsworth, is a human rights lawyer. Collingsworth said the plaintiffs plan to appeal in the hopes to force the companies to keep their own promises and end the system they have created. Now, we see this for what it is, all right? I'm not a court of law. I'm a different kind of court. We're the court of public opinion here and common sense. They are aware of how business gets done. They are completely aware of the culture that they are helping permeate, create. But they have this plausible deniability, loose connections. And so the judge tosses it because it's not really traceable, the connections here, according to the judge. To me, that's an issue for the jury to figure out. My law professor would say the jury is the fact finder of a case, not the judge. The other defendants include privately held Mars Inc., Mondelez International Inc., Barry Callebaut, and Alum International Ltd. In court papers, the 7 defendants have said they strongly condemn the use of forced labor and we're working to address non-forced child labor in cocoa supply chains. We strongly object and condemn slavery, but we're trying to address non-forced child slavery that we are aware of. What? Okay, it gets even more weird. According to the Food Empowerment Project, Western African countries, mostly Ghana and Ivory Coast, supply about 70% of the world's cocoa. That's a lot. The farms of West Africa and Brazil supply cocoa to international giants such as Hershey's, Mars, and others, revealing the industry's direct connection to the worst forms of child labor, human trafficking, and slavery known to us currently. Okay? All right. These companies should be held accountable. This is part of that exposure. Jessica, thoughts on this?
I think it's really important that what we're doing here is contextualizing this. It can be easy to look at this and stories like this and say, this was a terrible thing that happened, But it's really important to remember this is a pattern of behavior. And sometimes breaking news is this is what's happening right now. But what's really important is what happened yesterday and what's likely to happen tomorrow. Stephen Kinzer, who was a newsman for many years, told me that. And it couldn't be more true, because what's going on here is an extension of colonial rule, just to zoom out and see how this is really global in scale. In the post-colonial era, colonization didn't really end, it just changed its form for a long time. European countries were going out into Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, and forcibly, with guns and with violence, stealing labor or exploiting labor, stealing resources, stealing land. And after the post-colonial era, what we're in now, neocolonialism, what we're doing is using somewhat legitimized institutions like the IMF and like the World Bank. And the United States has printed a lot of their dollars, put these countries in debt, and used a development model of just make raw goods. And people are still forced into labor as a part of this larger system. And so what's going on here is the United States perpetuating this system, perpetuating global capitalism abroad, and keeping people impoverished, and people now doing slave labor so that the United States can profit off of the extraction of raw goods in places like Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. And it's disgusting, and it's important that right now, when we're really feeling the impact of the corrupt judicial system in the United States and the high courts in the United States, that this injustice and this corruption is really global in scale. And a lot of the decision makers have stock and receive dividends and know the owners of these multinational corporations that are benefiting from this centuries-long system of exploitation.
This is, and so well said, this is worse than an expression of capitalism. This is corporatism, which is far worse, by the way. And here's what has to happen, okay? Until these companies address this appropriately, I would never purchase another damn thing associated with any of these companies. I encourage you to do the same. If you have investments, make sure your investments do not support these companies. I would divest in anything that supports any of these companies. Remember, we're talking about actual child slave labor. That's what's on the table. That's what we're discussing. Until this is appropriately fixed, remedied, until there's actual accountability, why would we want to support it? Why? Don't allow the conveniences of particular things in this society, or even the convenience of life itself, make you shed your humanity, especially as it relates to children.